right, founders, hello, welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are here with Bruce Winder, president of Bruce Winder Retail and author of the book Retail Before, During, and After COVID-19. Welcome back, Bruce. Great to have you in the studio.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Okay, so part two, founders, listen up, because this is all about the things that you can do in your business right now to make sure that you are around for the future of retail. And I thought it might be interesting to kind of break out these suggestions as they pertain to, you know, my favorite, a cash flow and a balance sheet. So top line, cost of goods, and then into operating. So top line is all about the sales piece of it, the revenue, the pricing. What suggestions do you have for founders in terms of remedies or solutions for those top line issues?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I mean, obviously everything top line will drive everything. You have to take care of your expenses and everything below that, but you can't do much unless you have a healthy top line. And I mean, you know, if you're in a location where you've been open, you've been blessed. But if you're in a location where you haven't been open or you haven't been open recently, it's really tough. And I think the key thing, and some of this sounds like, you know, like it's pretty obvious, but there are some folks who aren't doing some of these things, is make sure that you do have an e-commerce setup if it makes sense for your goods. A lot of people, like literally hundreds of thousands of Canadian businesses, did not have an e-commerce setup for their business. Like we talked about in part one, they really wanted that experiential and sort of bring the customer in, which made a lot of sense. But times have changed a bit now. So I really think you need to have an e-commerce, a robust e-commerce program. You may also want to piggyback on some of the marketplaces and sell your products maybe on Amazon, or, you know, Shopify has an app, Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, like wherever you can reach a lot of people, because you might be able to sell things outside of your trade area too. You know, if you can get online, you might sell it to people all over Canada, and suddenly you're accessing a big market with e-commerce. And with that, you have to just make sure that you have, you know, the infrastructure to ship and things like that. Make sure you have curbside pickup. Again, that's not too hard to do. A lot of the software from the companies now will help you do that. And then try to look at your assortment. Try to look at what products and services you're offering. Now, we're kind of, you know, still in the midst of this, but, you know, find out from your customers, you know, what should I be selling? What do you need right now? Look at your numbers and find out which part of your assortment is doing really, really well. The old 80-20 rule. And don't be afraid to pare down your inventory a bit. You know, get rid of some of those items that aren't moving. Just don't replace them right now. A lot of retailers are operating at sort of an 80-20 assortment, where they're only operating 20% of their lineup because it's 80% of their sales for efficiencies. Look for new products too. You know, I use the example of a restaurant. I think it was out west, and they were a restaurant and they were forced to close, and people love their sauce, their spaghetti sauce. So what they did is they actually started canning their spaghetti sauce and selling it as a separate item and generating revenue. There's a lot of restaurants who are selling groceries. Find out what your customers want. Your customers want to keep you in business. They want you around. Yeah. So find out from them, you know, what can I carry that you need? And then work with a distributor, work with someone small to turn quickly, because that's your advantage, is you can pivot quickly. And, you know, to try some of these products, put some on your website. Maybe you can do a deal with a supplier to do it on consignment, where you don't have to pay for the inventory until it sells. So, you know, try new things like that, but it's all about getting in front of the customer, offering the services they need, you know, delivery, curbside pickup, online, and try to come up with, you know, different types of promotions to protect your top line.
Oh, so much I want to dive into there. Can you just clarify the 80-20 with the inventory management?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that happened right away, actually, when this thing hit, is suppliers all around the world and retailers. If you look at your assortment, most assortments in the world follow sort of an 80-20 rule, Pareto's law, which means if you look at your sales numbers, about 20% of your line in terms of product count represents about 80% of your sales. It's not always that way, but it's similar. Close. A lot of folks these days are saying, let's get rid of the tail ends. Let's just work with that 20%, maybe it's 30%. And really turn your inventory and sell the basics and sort of stop buying the stuff on the fringe. You'll get better returns financially for yourself and make your cash flow work harder. And you can take some of those dollars that you would have used in your budget to maybe try some new items based on what your customers want right now, whether it's PPE or other types of products, cleaning products, etc.
It comes to mind too right away, just the carrying costs on that 80% that isn't moving, right?
Exactly.
That typically came in with a loan, right, for a small business owner. So moving that. One question though for you, if they're going to move out that inventory, Would you recommend they do it under their banner? Because does that maybe symbolize that it's a blowout sale, or they're trying to liquidate, and what are your thoughts on that? And just in terms of moving out, like rapidly moving out that inventory that isn't moving?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I mean, there's a couple of ways to do it. One is you can have a little clearance section in your store. You can put a sign that says clearance, or you can see if your supplier will take some back. Usually suppliers are pretty tough. They won't do that, but you can always try. Or just let it run out, but don't replenish it. Just let it run out at regular, but don't replenish it.
Okay. And what are you seeing? I consider this still top line. We're getting into pricing a little bit, but what are you seeing from a discount perspective? I'm not a big fan of discounting, quite honestly. I think it discounts value. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you just have to check the marketplace. What's happening right now in a lot of areas is there's a lot of folks who are discounting less. A lot of the big retailers are actually discounting less because they don't have to. They're taking advantage of that traffic because people are less price sensitive right now. They are and they aren't. If you lost your job, you're price sensitive. You're going to Dollarama and place. But there's a lot of people who maybe haven't lost their job that aren't as price sensitive. And you can mark to the market, wherever the market is pricing that commodity, be within a certain zone of that. And you might not have to do as much discounting because people are more into convenience right now and safety, right? And maybe supporting local. So don't feel you have to discount too much. You might want to look at your discounts and see if you can save a little bit of money by not discounting as much.
Okay, so I heard some really important things in there that I just want to reiterate. So know your market, know if they are going to be that customer that has the extra funds because they haven't been spending it on eating out and they still have their jobs and their security there. Or are they the ones that have lost their jobs and are looking for those bargain deal basement bargain deal? And then the second piece that I heard that was really important is understand what those incumbents are actually charging at, right? Those major dealers, and charge somewhat accordingly to that. Like
a lot of people have raised their prices too. There's been a lot of price raising, price increases. So just really, before you set your pricing, look around, do a quick competitive shop and see what you can get in the market to optimize your margins.
Super smart. Okay. Anything else on top line?
I think that's it right now.
Okay. Really great suggestions there. Cost of goods, otherwise known as money you are out of pocket to sell that product, just a 101. Everybody's on the same page. This often, obviously with our retail, this is the cost of the product itself. You mentioned something really important in our discovery call, and I love it. I've shared it a couple of times since then. Everyone needs to share the risk.
Absolutely.
Right now.
And the pain.
So can you expand and elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it is the time like never before to say to your partners, whether it's your landlord, your suppliers, maybe not your customers, but other people who you do business with, your utility providers, anyone who you are their customer, okay? It is time for them to help you and reduce your fees, negotiate lower rates, negotiate deferred payments, negotiate anything you can get, maybe freebies, but something to share the pain, because this is not meant, this should not be a situation where the little retailer is bearing the full brunt of this, okay? Your suppliers need to help you, your landlords need to help you, your service providers need to help you, everyone will. And if someone won't, it might be a good time to see if you can switch, because there's a lot of people who are moving around right now. So don't be shy about it. Don't be afraid to say, look, I need help. I've been with you for years. I've always paid on time. I've been a good customer to you. This is the time I need to cash in some of those favors. You need to help me.
Nice. I think that's very smart. What I see a lot of founders not do is not even put out the ask.
Yeah.
Right? Like, could you lower it by 1%? Could you throw in shipping? Could you, right? They don't even ask. And so
it's incredible what you can get when you ask. I was a buyer for 10 years at Canadian Tire. And when you ask, you get. If you don't ask, obviously you don't get.
You're not
right. So, don't be shy about asking. This is the time to get aggressive like that.
What about, are you seeing any direct ship models where they hold on to the inventory, but then they do the direct ship? So you kind of save on that a bit.
Yeah, that's another good point too, is you can say, look, supplier, I'm going to list your products on my website, or supplier, I'm going to show one in my store, but I'm not going to take any inventory. You can give me a display model free of charge. And then if I get an order, you can ship directly from your facility to the customer's house and you pick up the shipping. And it's not unreasonable to do that, because remember, you own the real estate. If you have a store, you own the real estate. If you have a website, it's your real estate online. You can negotiate to say, look, I'll put some of these extra products on here, but you do the shipping if they're hit. And you might do something, like I said, where you get a free display item in your store.
Okay.
One to show, and then several to go, except the go are from the supplier's warehouse.
And on the subject of shipping, knowing that seems to be a huge competitive advantage for a lot of these big businesses, the turnaround time, and that shipping is free with everything, it seems like. What would you suggest a small business owner look at? Should they bundle the shipping into the price, which then increases the price? Or any thoughts, or have you seen any innovation there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real tough one, because that's such a commoditized piece of the supply chain now, is the free shipping. I mean, one thing I would say be careful of is if you're a restaurant, be careful about the big food apps, because they charge a lot of money, 30% for some of those things. That's sad. What I would probably do is look and see if you can get someone in your neighborhood. Maybe it's a student who has their license who can do this on the side and do deliveries for you. Maybe you can do deliveries every day at a certain point yourself, where you leave the shop on the way home and drop them off yourself. Anything you can do to lower that cost. You're going to have to be competitive. So there is no silver bullet. You can either, if your margins warrant, you can include shipping in it. But if you're just one of those businesses that can't, you have to charge for shipping. But people are used to it now. People are used to paying for shipping, for grocery and things. And I know the big folks have free shipping, but you know what? There's reasons that some people don't want to buy from the big folks. So you have to be competitive with them, but try to find an angle, whether it's yourself doing the shipping, or a teenager or someone. There's a lot of people, believe it or not, looking for work right now. And maybe you could do a posting where someone has a car and their license, and they can deliver for you at a reduced rate.
So smart. So smart. Okay. I guess last little piece on cost of goods. This is one of my pet peeves, is merchant fees and transaction fees attached to those expenditures that really I usually see in operating expenses, but should be up in cost of goods. And now with online, right? I doubt that many founders are calculating that cost, and then that's just coming off their net profit. Any innovations there? Anything you're seeing?
No, I wish I had that. I mean, that's really, that's really an oligopoly, where you have the big credit card providers, and Canada pays the highest fees, some of the highest fees in the world, and the government's negotiated with them. They said they'd bring them down, and they stalled. So it's a really sad state of affairs, to be honest. I don't really have a silver bullet for that. A lot of people don't want to do cash right now for obvious reasons, because of the virus.
So I guess, what I'm hearing then is really just make sure that you're factoring into your cost of goods and your pricing strategy, so you're not taking a bath on the merchant fees at the end of the quarter.
I think so, unfortunately.
Okay, so that's our cost of goods. Now we move into operating expenses, and I love to kind of categorize based on team and personnel, space and operating, sales and marketing. So anything that you're seeing businesses do differently with their staff.
Well, one thing to make sure you're taking advantage of, again, this sounds like the obvious, but make sure you're taking advantage of any and all government rebates and subsidies right now. So the government has wage, they'll give you part of the employee wages up to a point. They'll help you with rent. They'll help you. That's just a general comment, but I know it takes a lot of time and the forms aren't user friendly, but see if you can just spend one night and just go through them all, because there could be some money there that you can get, and you might get lucky. There could be pressure for government to offer some of these loans that turn into grants. So I would be sort of taking some of these loans now, because you never know, like some of it is forgivable already. I could see the government sort of saying, we've changed our mind. Instead of it being 25% forgivable, it's 50% forgivable. But you only get that benefit if you've taken advantage of those subsidies, right? So I would make sure you do that. It's a tough one with the team right now. That's probably the best thing I can think of, is use the government subsidies for wages. That's probably the best thing, because your staff are having a hard time too. They're scared about going to work. Many of them have lost their jobs already. I don't really see anything there in terms of best practices to cut anything from a staff standpoint. It's a real tough one.
I wonder though, as you were talking, an idea that came to mind is just I know that some of the provinces now are offering subsidies in the area of professional development, learning, education, training, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe there's a way that you might be able to, negotiate on salary, but in exchange for that you get training in other areas, which is subsidized. But
yeah, I mean, it all depends on whatever you can work out with your staff, right? I mean, if it's a manager, some managers have taken pay cuts during this time.
Right.
It's tough. No one wants to do that. But if it means the difference between having a job and, having a 25% pay cut for 6 months versus not having a job at all, the manager might see it that way. Tougher to do with people, near the minimum wage level for obvious reasons. But if you have someone who's a manager who's making a pretty decent salary, they might be willing to do that, or they might be willing to put in some extra hours voluntarily to help out, to try to get you through this tough time.
Yeah. I would hope too that this is a time where every employee is stepping up and going all out, giving it 100%, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would hope.
Yeah.
Okay, so space and operating. Oh, there's probably a lot in space right now. I would imagine you must be seeing a lot of businesses kind of reinvent their space or try to sublease their space. Any innovations that you're seeing in that area?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a couple now, but some people, you're right, have actually sort of taken some space and started to add local crafts from suppliers. So maybe they live in a market and they're selling something and there's local artisans. They may allow the artisans to sell some things on consignment to take advantage of space. Definitely the rearranging though of the store to make it safe so that there's lots of space for people to walk, safe for staff, and so it can breathe a bit. Obviously, that's not the best from a profit standpoint, because if you have it too spatial, then you don't have enough merchandise. So it's that fine line between space and having a tight assortment. But if you cut your inventory back, like we said, to the 80-20 rule, it might give you enough space to sort of make it breathe a bit more. But I would say, look at other businesses that your customers are desiring right now that they would endorse you to get into temporarily or permanently, where you can add some space in your store with new assortments. And maybe some of that can be through consignment through some vendors that helps you with your cash flow, or maybe just have a display sample if it's a bigger item. But get creative. A lot of people are looking for fitness products. A lot of people are looking for PPE. A lot of people are looking for home goods right now. As the weather turns, they'll be looking for summer goods and summer toys to entertain kids. So kind of try to get in front of it where you can, because we're going to still be, it's going to be a little messy here till the fall. So anticipate what kind of products your consumers would need and ask them. See if they would support you if you brought in a line of it.
I wonder too, Bruce, with the future of retail, if we're going to move into the space where our retail space really becomes more of a showroom.
Yeah.
Right, where you've got one of everything and then it just drop ship on what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're bang on. I think that's right, because, let's face it, more and more of business is moving online, and it's going to keep going. And you're going to see retail stores being more of a showroom and maybe a pickup spot too. Okay, a pickup spot to pick up a package and return a package, maybe to ask some questions, maybe to look at sort of products where you don't have a lot of back inventory, to your point. Maybe it's, you're going to ship from a central warehouse. So the store is going to be redefined. Eventually, once things get better, stores will be going back to being more experiential with technology. But in the short run, it's going to be a little more functional, because people just need to survive through this. So, I would definitely say, see what you can do in terms of running down your inventory, but you still need to provide quick replenishment for consumers, because they're not going to be satisfied waiting 2 weeks, because they can buy it from someone else who can get it to them maybe 2 days.
I think this is the challenge for a lot of small business owners. It's always been a challenge, but especially now, it's like you've got to react to what's happening now. And I know a lot of people are trying to find ways to survive, but the real power in sustainability is thinking ahead, right? Thinking to the future about, well, how do you start to change now to be able to address that need, so you're not always in catch-up mode. You start to get ahead of the curve.
The other thing too, which might be in this section or another section, is just about maybe looking to see if it's time to get an investor. So if you're really, really hurting, and I know you don't want to do it, you love being your own boss, and you can still be your own boss, but maybe it's time to get sort of a secondary partner who can inject some money into your business and give them part of it. Again, it's better than going bankrupt. It's better than going under, is to have a partner to help you through that.
Yeah, huge. Okay, and sales and marketing. I know in the last piece, you talked a little bit in our last segment, you were talking about the customer relationship, right? And the power that we have to show up powerfully for them right now and kind of speak to them at their level and understand that emotion and connection. How have you seen our marketing and promotion piece really shift through COVID?
Well, what's happened now is almost all marketing is done now through social media. So people are sitting around the house and they're on their smartphones all day and all night. And if there's any way that you can use it, if you use, Facebook or some of these other Instagram, etc., you need to make sure you have a presence on there, and you can actually do some very targeted advertising within your community. So you might want to consider that. If you haven't already, make sure you have everyone's email and send them email campaigns with offers. Don't send them too many because people get annoyed, but maybe once every week or every 2 weeks, you send them a reminder with some things. So keep in touch with them virtually like that. You can also offer, maybe if you're selling higher end items and you need to walk people through it, you can do Zoom calls and things like that, virtual store appointments and things of that nature to make sure that that they're there and that you can sell to them and keep connected with them. And I saw one example which was incredible. I saw this on TV a while ago, and there was one small retailer, and she owned a bakery, and she made bread that was gluten-free. And she closed down. And what she did, though, is she started baking loaves and dropping them off to her customers' homes, even without asking. She just started doing that. And it's just a huge outpouring where her customers literally in droves came to her store buying everything from her, way more than they used to before, because she was so good enough to bake a loaf of bread for them, deliver it to their home without any questions asked. And she built such an incredible loyalty with them. So this is the time to really go above and beyond. I know it costs a little bit in the short run, you got to balance that, but if you hit the right heartstring with your customer, they're going to be so loyal to you, they'll run through a wall for you, which means they'll buy everything in your store just to keep you afloat and pay you back for that goodwill.
That's powerful. It reminds me of an episode we did a while back where the message in this was how you show up for your clients now becomes your brand when COVID is over.
Exactly. Right? That's a great point.
It's what people will remember. And so that understanding their pain point and kind of meeting them where they're at.
Exactly. 100%.
Huge. Okay. Very valuable. Thank you, Bruce. You walked us through tons of tips there on the top line, the cost of goods, the operating expenses. I will just put in here, I will share this as you get access to these funds that the government is putting out there, remember to include these in your budget, right? Because we do owe this money back. It is a loan. There is a forgivable portion in many cases, up to 20 with the CEBA, but if you access the 60, but it is a loan. So making sure that we're finding ways to be able to repay that. I don't know, Bruce, I don't want to put you on the spot with this. I'm just curious. I get a mixed reaction when I ask people this question. But do you know if a promissory note is attached to that loan, or is it only attached to the business and the entrepreneur is not responsible? That's a loaded one. I don't think anybody.
I don't know enough about the accounting on how it works, but I mean, I know that the government's going to be in a pickle, and the optics around this, if they let a bunch of small businesses suffer and die, the optics around that are going to be brutal come voting time. So look for the government to sort of continue to open their wallet here to make sure that people are taken care of, small businesses are taken care of.
Took us through some incredible information there, especially in the second segment where we're talking all about the tips. I think everything we wanted to cover off in the third segment, we have actually talked about, right? We talked about finding potentially those equity partners. If you're going to find an equity partner, do the business plan, do the cash flows.
Absolutely.
You should be doing cash flows. And then again, just all those phenomenal top line tips. We didn't really talk about splintering. I don't know if you want to get into that a little bit, but splintering, what I've been seeing is just people breaking out a big ticket item and just offering a portion of it at a smaller price point. But
that's something that's been around. I mean, that's something that I've noticed as a trend, sort of when times get tough, and it could be even smaller portions of things. So, the example, it sounds funny, but the example is back in the Great Recession, you used to buy these big chocolate bars that were like $1.50. Well, people started coming out with sort of 70-cent little wafers. So the cold drink companies, instead of a big can of Coke, they came out with these mini cans. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. As you're going to see maybe splintering is sort of where you take something and you sort of downsize it because people are watching their money a little more. And if you actually do it right, you can make more profit on those smaller items because the retail is greater than the difference in cost.
I'm glad we talked about that, because that's a great example. I didn't even think about that in the product line. So very smart. So again, Bruce, thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
My pleasure.
And sharing that expertise. We've got a link to your book down below in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. So retail before, during, and after COVID-19. You're okay with us putting your contact information
Absolutely.
in there,
Thank you.
correct?
Yeah. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Well, thank you. And again, just a huge shout out to our episode champion, Community Futures of Manitoba, over 16 offices to help businesses in Manitoba build their business, nail their bottom line. But Community Futures is a part of a larger network across Canada with offices from coast to coast to help rural entrepreneurs through this time. So thank you for all the work you do, Community Futures. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, founders, for watching. And as always, stay safe, stay strong, and stay financially fierce. We'll see you for the next episode of the Gap Lab. Bye for now.